I'm a member of the Community Forum Committee. As you know, we put on forums that are of interest to our congregation and to the community at large. Today we have one of, I think, should be of very intense interest. It's on school safety. We're focusing on schools, but with the recent tragedy at the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh, it reminds us that there are attacks at synagogues, at churches, at mosques, at other places of worship. There are also been attacks at movie theaters, at dance halls. Let's see. They've been at political rallies. The one where Representative Gifford was shot. We've even had an attack at a congressional baseball practice. Today we have two panelists who are eminently suited to address all these issues, the common issues in all of those events. And we have with us, we have the Chief of Police of Shaker Heights, Chief Jeffrey DeMuth, and we have the Superintendent of the Cleveland Heights, University Heights Schools, Dr. Talisa Dixon. Chief DeMuth, I believe, is going to Chief DeMuth is going to start. He's been with the Shaker Police Department ever since he graduated from Bowling Green, which was in, what was that? When was that?
1985, I think it was. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Anyway, he has been chief for about 2 years now, and he's made a lot of adjustments in the department policies and procedures, making them more responsive to the community as a whole. He's going to talk to us about what they do there to make schools safe. Chief DeMuth.
Thank you, Mr. Rich. Now they've outfitted me with all this technology, so I'm going to turn it on and put the switches on before I start. So I'm not sure I know what I'm doing here, but can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. All right. No? Yes. How about, yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Like Mr. Rich said, I'm Jeff DeMuth. I'm the Chief of Police of the Shaker Heights Police Department. I've been with the department for 32 years. I did graduate from Bowling Green State University, and then I went back years on, and I went back and got my master's degree and an accounting degree. And there's a story behind that, but I have an MBA and an accounting degree also. Now, when Mr. Rich asked me to make this presentation about school safety, I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that, number one, I am not an expert in school safety. And what I'm going to talk to you today about kind of backs in to where we need to go. And I want you guys to, you folks to think about some of the things I'm going to present to you and what you personally can do about it. We were talking before the presentation about personal responsibility in regards to community safety. And I believe in that. And Mr. Rich talked about when I took over as the Chief of Police. Jim took over when I talked about when I took over as the Chief of Police. And I did make a bunch of organizational changes. Many that were needed to make our department more responsive to the community. And what I can tell you is this, I've been beating the drum for the last 3 years. I actually took over in October of 2015 because our chief was sick. He got sick. And what I can tell you is this, I've been beating the drum as loud as I can to the citizens of Shaker Heights that I can't do it without you folks. If you live here, I can't do it without you folks. I can't. I have 68 authorized officers and some more support personnel. We have about 106 total employees. But when you think about it, there's hundreds and hundreds of streets and thousands of houses and almost 30,000 residents and to keep you folks safe, and I know I'm veering off here, I can't do it without the folks of Shaker Heights. I can't do it. And we've been pretty successful in that. Where everybody I talked to, I said, I need your help. And how do I need your help? I need you to call us. I need whatever you see that looks outside the realm of normal in where you live, where you work, or where you walk, you call us. And again, we've been pretty successful because last year we had the lowest crime rate ever recorded in the city of Shaker Heights. And we've been recording statistics since, I think it's 1956. So last year, we had a lower crime rate in Shaker Heights than we had in 1956. And that's not because we're patting the back of the Shaker Heights police officers. I'm patting the back of our community and saying thank you. Thank you so much for calling us as much as you do. And don't feel like it's, oh, this is just a silly thing. Call us all the time. All right? So, again, that's a little bit about me. It's a little bit about Shaker Heights. And I'm here to talk to you about school safety. But if you'll bear with me, I'm going to back into it. All right? And hopefully you'll understand where I'm trying to go with all this. All right? So, I think I got this right. Yeah, look at this. All right. So, what I'm going to talk about first is active shooters, right? Because that's the common theme. That's what we're all worried about. That's what we all have in our mind about safety and security in school systems. Now, up here you have a definition of an active shooter. Now, again, I wanted to make sure that everybody understands I'm not an expert in school safety, and I'm not an expert in active shooters. What I can, and what hopefully you'll gather from all this, is you'll gather some things to think about and how we can stop or help stop this phenomenon. So, couched in this definition of active shooter is obviously the use of firearms, right? What you're going to receive is some statistics from 2000 through 2017 about research about active shooting incidents. And it also includes incidents that have 2 or more shooters, but all the active shooter incidents, only 2 had more than 1 single shooter. Only 2. It does not, and the reason I talk to you about this is it's a very specific definition of crime. It doesn't include targeted killings where bystanders were not hurt. It does not include suicides. It does not include active crime in confined spaces. But what it does include is indiscriminate killing of people. That's what it does include. And it does not necessarily imply inside structures. Okay, I'm successful. All right, so we're going to go over some relevant statistics here, and we're going to fly by these pretty quick, but I think it's important that we understand what's going on here. So, again, quick look at 250 active shooter incidents from 2000 to 2017. The common misperception, in my eyes, I believe, is that most of them occur in educational institutions. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just my problem, but that's not the case at all. The vast majority of active shooter incidents occur in commerce areas, right? And it breaks it down. Businesses open to pedestrian traffic, and businesses close to pedestrian traffic. Office area or retail. Yes, ma'am.
Is that a sampling or is that the
That is,
total of?
those are actual statistics.
Sheila, can we hold our questions? Can we hold our questions for questions?
What we also should know is in active shooter incidents is that in most incidents, the active shooter do not have a connection with the victims. In most instances, they don't have a connection. But if you had to take a guess where the active shooter does have a connection with the incidents, where would you think it was in that pie chart there? It's overwhelming that active shooters that partake in incidents is with government facilities and commerce. They have an active connection or an active link at those facilities, not necessarily at school systems. And you guys can figure that out. Just look at Sandy Hook, right? That's one example. Again, incidents per year. Does anybody notice anything? Yeah, I superimposed that arrow on there. But look at 2000, there was 1. Look at 2017, 30. Last year, that was the highest number of recorded active shooter incidents on the books last year. And the fellow I was talking to is sitting in the back. My question, and I pose to all of you folks, is have we crested? Or are we going to still going up? And are we still going to go up and do that? I don't have 18 because 18 is still going on, right? Have we crested? I don't know. Importantly, if you'll look, in the last 10 years, 76% of all those active shooter incidents took place in the last 10 years. More importantly, 43% of them took place in the last 5. So what I propose is we haven't crested. We're going to continue to climb. It's a very bad optic right there. Casualties. That's the number of killed and wounded in all those active shooter incidents since 2000. I think we all can see what happened in 2017. These aren't my statistics. These are the FBI statistics that have done the research. Obviously, you all can see the trend is obvious that these incidents are becoming increasingly more deadly. All right, other relevant facts about active shooters, and this is where we get into the meat of what I hope you guys, and I say you guys, you folks, will get out of this. I'm sorry, it's a little small for you. I apologize. Active shooters cannot be identified based on demographics only. There is that misconception that yes, you can identify them by demographics only. No, you can't. You cannot. There's only been 6 known females to participate in active shooter incidents, but there have been females. The age range of all active shooters in that 2000 to 2017 is 12 to 88. So the average age is 37.8. 63% of all active shooters who participated in incidents were white. The level of education attained varied considerably. Some had master's degrees, some just had GEDs. It's almost equal, the amount of people who participated employed or unemployed. Greater than 80% of the active shooters did not have a felony or misdemeanor conviction on their record, which means they are not known criminals, or in my vernacular, they're not known to the system. They don't have any criminal record. Greater than 80%. So who are we looking at who's a possible active shooter? Right? Right? How about firearms? And I apologize, I should have made that larger, but I tried to get it all on one side. Only 8% of the firearms used in active shooter incidents were obtained illegally. Only 8%, which means 92% of firearms used in active shooter incidents were obtained legally. Now that's a whole other discussion, right? That's a whole other discussion that we can't get into here, but that's a misnomer also. What I can tell you is a small percentage have been legally diagnosed with mental illness, but just a small percentage. And I say legally diagnosed. They might have mental illness, but they have not been diagnosed prior to. The attacks are always, always, always the result of primary grievances on the part of the active shooter. Always. They cause resentment.
A primary grievance?
I'm going to go into it.
Okay.
All right, they cause resentment. They're the cause of resentment and distress, and they're not necessarily, sir, they're not necessarily based in reality. And we could figure that out. So what are the primary grievances that all active shooters are working on? Interpersonal actions against the shooter. Somebody slighted them. Maybe it was a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Somebody slighted them somehow, some way. Adverse employment action. That kind of dovetails into what we talked about, the connection with the government or commerce area that has the largest connection. And remember, business locations are the largest locations where active shooter incidents have taken place. General hatred of others or hate crimes, and we saw that in Pittsburgh, right? That's a primary grievance. Adverse academic action against the shooters. adverse financial action against the shooters, and ideology and extremism, and that's self-explanatory. The vast majority of active shooters, I would say almost all, based on the research, they plan and prepare for their attack. Their plan time, this is interesting, I thought it was very interesting. 76% of all active shooters take a week or longer to plan. It's interesting to me, maybe not to you, but more importantly, and this is important to me, once they've planned their attack, the research has shown that they will take between 1 day and 1 month to execute it. And what that means to me is once the decision is made and it's been planned, they will act very quickly on their plan. They're driven, they're committed to what they want to do. Absolutely. So there's some pre-attack indicators that I think we should look at, and this is where I hope you guys tune in. And this is where how I started this conversation about how we brought the crime rate down in Shaker Heights. And this is where all you folks enter into this picture. And my friend back there says, know thy neighbor. Know thy neighbor. Get to know thy neighbor. So it's easy to believe that nothing can be done to stop active shooters. And I believe that most people, and the people I talk to, have a feeling of hopelessness and helplessness in regards to what can we do? There's nothing out there. There's no magic pill that can stop these active shooter incidents or create safety in our school system. And hopefully you understand how I'm backing into this now. We wrestle with that fundamental question all the time. What can we do to stop this? And yes, there is no magic pill. There is not a magic pill. But I believe that there's cause for hope that something can be done. And what I'm going to show you here is the cause from hope. Hope is the cause for hope. And what I will tell you, in every single active shooter incident, whether it's in a school system, area of commerce, in a house of worship, active shooters observe some behaviors that everybody will notice and everybody can notice. And some of the behaviors are intentionally concealed and some of them are observable to others. Always. Always, always, always. What do you think the barriers to success are? The barriers to our success in identifying active shooters are us, right? We, number one, we erroneously attribute behavior that may be or may not be malevolent. And number two is, you know, Jeff's a really good guy. I don't want to call the police on him. Right? Those are our barriers to success. So if you embody some of the things I'm going to talk about, maybe this will help. So here's what I can tell you. All active shooters since actually 1999 have experienced at least 4 significant stressors in their life 1 year prior to their attack. 4 significant stressors in their life. And what are those stressors? Mental health issues, that's obvious, right? That's a stressor for people in their life. Financial stress, job-related stressors, interpersonal conflict with family, friends, and colleagues, marital problems, and of course, drug and alcohol abuse. Now those are stressors on the individual person's life, right? Again, 4 significant stressors. Every single, research has shown that every single active shooter that participated in an incident since 1999 have experienced at least 4 significant stressors in their life prior to participating in an incident. Here's the important part. And here's what I talked about earlier a few minutes ago about concerning behaviors that are observable to you folks. All right? And what's important is that the stressors cause the objectively observable behavior, but studies show that overwhelmingly, and we can prove this in the studies, that active shooters are not isolated people. They are not isolated people. They have interpersonal interaction with people all the time. It's just, are the people able to pick up those concerning behaviors? Again, they're observable. And the multiple behaviors that they're emitting, if you will, or that are observable, there's an average of 5 of these. So again, the 4 significant stressors, and there's at least 5 of these behaviors on average that all active shooters have admitted or acted out with. They have a symptom of mental health disorder. And here's the barrier to success, right? I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a doctor. How do I know that's a mental health disorder? I think we can identify that. I think we can get over that hump, right? It's just not normal, right? Interpersonal interactions. They cannot interact on a, and I'm going to put this in air quotes, in a normal interpersonal interaction with anybody. They have conflict all the time in interpersonal interactions. The quality of their thinking or communication. They have a trouble getting their point across. They have a trouble putting 1 and 1 and 1 and 1 together to make their point. Is their point not obvious? Recklessness, impulsivity, and physical aggression. That's pretty self-explanatory. Violent social media usage. I should have put this in 33 bold font, right? That's the #1 indicator. #1 indicator. Violent social media usage of active shooters. Changes in hygiene and weight. That's obvious. If you are interacting with your neighbor or your family member, you'll notice the change in their hygiene and weight, right? Firearm behavior, excessive ideation. They are just consumed with firearms. Whether it's in one of their interpersonal interactions, they want to talk to you about gun control, right? They are just consumed with the ideation of firearms. And then leakage. And leakage is pretty easy. It's communication to a third party. That third party may not ever come forward, but it's communication to a third party that they are planning to do something. And leakage is much different. Much, much different. And Ms. Dixon, I know, knows about this because we know about it in Shaker Heights. It's much different than the public preemption warning that we see on social media, where you'll see an anonymous post on Twitter that says, "I'm going to blow up the school." Much, much different. And what you'll see is in the research is there's never, ever been a preemptive warning by a active shooter. And it's much different than violent social media usage. What I'm saying about that is, when you talk about that, that's all about hatred towards something or someone. But they're not giving you a preemptive look at what they're going to do. With all these behaviors, almost all of the behaviors were noticed in 1 month to 2 years prior to the attack. So combating active shooters. Advanced tactics, stop killing, saving lives. And here's where I'm going to gloss over a little bit. I'm going to gloss over a little bit, and I'm going to speed up, I'm sorry, because I don't want to give out too many of our shop secrets. But what we've done here, and we learned from Columbine, right? In Columbine, we waited for the SWAT team while the killing continued. No longer do we do that. We no longer do that. And again, I don't want to give away shop secrets, and I'm going to get going because I got the... Shaker is small enough that we can respond in less than 5 minutes. Active shooter incidents occur in 5 minutes, within 5 minutes. We're small enough we can respond in 5 minutes or less, and we will be there and hopefully contain the active shooter. We have advanced and relevant training for both law enforcement and fire EMS. We equip EMS with Kevlar vests, for example. And I'm trying to speed up, but we have contact teams now with fire. We have contact teams now in waves that go in law enforcement. So what I'm going to tell you is, if we have an active shooter in this building right now, and I have an officer out there, he is going to get his equipment out, and he is going in by himself. And then you'll have waves and waves of contact teams coming in after that. And what happens, the way we save our life, is we triage on the way. And our officers are equipped. Our officers are equipped with life-saving gauze that has stop lock on it. And we also carry tourniquets. So we can save lives. That's the idea, save lives. Public, the Ohio Association of Crime Prevention and the county EMA offers training for houses of worship and how to protect yourselves in active shooter incidents. Equipment, all of our officers carry M4s in their car. They're rifles, right? We do that for a reason. We learn from Columbine. We learn. We have to carry those tools, right? And our communication flow with the school system. We are in constant communication with our school system, always, in regards to events and or people in the community. And there was a whole thing of training I was going to go over, but I know I've been getting the high signs, so I apologize for going over. We're going to hold questions to the end?
Yeah, we're going to hold questions
All right.
till the end.
Thank you.
Chief DeMuth has given us a lot to think about. Our other speaker is Superintendent Talisa Dixon. She's superintendent of the Cleveland Heights University Heights School System. She's in her 5th year at that post, and unfortunately she won't be with us very long because she's done such a good job there that she's been selected as the next superintendent of the Columbus school system, which is the largest school system in the state, and I suspect it's one of the largest in the country. She has, Dr. Dixon has done a lot of things at CHUH, which have given her, earned her many awards and earned her the recognition from Columbus. We're looking forward to hearing what she does on the state level, and we're also we're glad that she's finishing a year at here, and that she's talking to us today. Dr. Dixon.
Good morning and thank you. So I'm glad the chief was able to go first to kind of give an overall context. Many times people think that school districts, we do it by ourselves when it comes to school safety and active shooters, but I think you understand now that it is totally a partnership. Even in Cleveland Heights, when we work with 3 cities, so it's not just a partnership with Cleveland Heights, it's also University Heights and South Lyndhurst. So it gets tough sometimes when we're trying to manage that of 3 cities, but we're able to do it and do it successfully. One thing we used to say, even I used to say, that parents want to send their kids to a school where they are learning. And I've changed that. And now it's parents want to send their students to a school that's safe. Safety is so important, and we do not want to compromise the safety of any child. It is important that we have drills. It's frustrating that we have to have drills all the time, but we have to. And that's from, because you never know what may happen. You hope that nothing happens, but we want to make sure that our students and our teachers are prepared. So many times we partner with our cities and our churches for unification places. So we can have drills and we have a place that we unify our staff and students, and parents may want to come pick up kids, etc. We've had those drills. I'm glad I couldn't do a PowerPoint because I can't give out the secrets at all. I wanted to, and my team said, no, Talisa, you can't. We cannot disclose our safety plans, unfortunately, because you never know, someone in the audience, unfortunately, may wait for opportunities for school systems and others to disclose their plans, and unfortunately, they act on those things. So for us, safety is important, education is important. We want to make sure our parents, social media, I'm glad you talked about that. Social media and our students, they're just irresponsible, unfortunately, when it comes to social media. We've had instances in Cleveland Heights where we have an incident, something that happens in Shaker on Monday, and then we have a copycat in Cleveland Heights on Tuesday. And you're trying constantly to talk to our parents and our students about being responsible and not playing games, say things, when we were in school, we could play little jokes, not to this magnitude, but you can't now. And unfortunately, our students face criminal charges when they make false claims of active shooters in the buildings or safety, they can, and so can you imagine a student that's 13 or 14 years old that can possibly ruin their lives because they've made a false claim. So with that, we do in our schools, we, especially in the first ring suburbs, and that's 16 districts that surround Cleveland metropolitan, we work together in making sure that we are sharing our safety plans. We're working closely with our police officers, and we're working hard to educate our parents and our students and our teachers. And finally, we're having drills constantly. We're constantly having drills. And I know some students or your grandkids or your nieces and nephew may come and say, we had another drill today, and we have to. For example, we have a school at Wiley campus. We have drills that we walk our students over to the parking lot at Target. But that is a place that we can get our students to while the police officers come in and investigate. So please be patient with us with the schools. When you hear something, know that we are taking every threat seriously. Even though at times we don't, we may not, some people say, oh, kids just playing around and maybe a hoax. We cannot afford to not take it seriously. Even if we have 5 drills a day or we're evacuating 5 times a day, I'd rather do that than to take something for granted and have to make a dreadful phone call to a parent. And fortunately, I've never had to do it, and I do not want to do it. No superintendent wants to be the one that calls a family member or call the church or someone to say that we've had something tragic happen. And I'm grateful that we have a community that serves 3 cities, but that we can come together or we can talk to the people in Shaker to say, hey, something is happening in our schools. You may want to be inform your parents of something that's happened. So we are partnering together, but we're making sure that people are aware of what's happening. And finally, again, I think one of the things you stated about the communities coming together, we have to speak up. We have to tell, even if it's a neighbor you're suspicious, please pick up the phone and call the school, call the police officers. That's how we find out information. Someone saw something that just didn't sit right. And they reach out and make a phone call and we investigate. And that's how we've been able to stop some senseless things from happening because we're not afraid to reach out and tell, and you won't be, your name won't be disclosed, but we will contact officials in the school district, the police officers, and say, hey, we need to investigate this. Someone is not safe. Something looks suspicious, and we need to investigate and act quickly. So that's it from the school stance. I know we have some questions that we can answer.
Thank you, Dr. Dixon.
Yes.
I'm sure we have some questions. We always do. Now, if you have a question, like Wayne here, please raise your hand and somebody will give you a microphone. And with the microphone, you can speak better than I do with this one. And everybody can hear you and we can record your questions.
Okay, first, we were going to be passing around, anybody who wants to get our email list that isn't, we'll be passing around these. So I'll start this one. First question.
Hi, my question's for Dr. Dixon. We had 2 sons who both went through the Heights system, but they graduated a dozen, 13, 14 years ago. So we're a little out of touch with what's been going on, but along the lines that the ones who are most likely to detect something is amiss, as the chief was saying, aberrant behavior or air quotes out of the normal, whatever the case may be, particularly on social media, the people most likely to pick up on that are fellow students, I would think. And I'm wondering, does the school system, particularly at the high school, have some sort of general, include all of that in some sort of general assembly at the beginning of the school year or something to clue the student body into the fact that some of this awareness needs to be on them?
Yes. great question, and yes. So in the beginning of the school year, we are talking with our students about safety and using social media responsibly. Unfortunately, social media they have something called Snapchat, for example. So you can send something out and it just goes away in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It it's so sophisticated, but students, we really rely on our students telling us. And so we've had instances that's happened when our students they're going to a trusted adult and they're saying, hey, we think such and such. And that's how we've been able to act quickly on it, because some of the students are telling. Students want rules. They want to be in a safe place, and they are telling us. Now, we don't tell who told us, but students are telling us quickly and with no punishment or consequence given to that student. But we're encouraging our students at all times, not just in case of someone doing harm to others, but even someone that may be want to do harm to themselves. So we're making sure that we create a culture in which students feel safe reporting it, and that we're acting responsibly and quickly, and that we're not taking any threat or any information that comes to us for granted. We are investigating. But times are different now, and that's the piece that we want to make sure that even for my elementary schools, I mean, we having to have those conversations with our elementary students, even though they may not understand, but we have to, because we want them to understand what the drills are and how important a drill is when we have it. So it is a tough conversation that we're having earlier than schools have had traditionally, but we have to have them early and often, and especially to our parents to partner with us.
If I could add to that, I mean, Dr. Dixon is exactly right. The kids in Shager have been wonderful, and the vast majority want to be safe and secure in their educational setting. And there are, I don't know if I want to say hundreds, but many, many investigations we undertake that no one knows about, just because of a student has spoken up and said, you know what, I am not comfortable with, John Smith because of observable behaviors, and I know he's under a certain amount of stress here, here, and here. And that's what I was trying to get out to all you folks is, it's up to you.
Even things that may happen on the weekend, if there's a family fight or some discord that's happening in the neighborhood, if you Monday morning call us or send an email on Sunday night and say, if something happened, you may want to investigate this. Feel free to do so, because you never know.
Good morning, and thank you for a very insightful program. I'm over here, Chief.
Oh.
My question is partially for you and a little for our superintendent. President Trump and others have suggested very proactive approaches to security in churches and schools, metal detectors, security officers, all sorts of different active measures. What is your opinion of this, and is it necessary for us to protect ourselves from someone? For example, this is a congregation with a lot of liberal thinkers, and in Tennessee, a person who hated that kind of thinking attacked and shot some people. So are you in favor of a proactive approach with metal detectors and security officers in place during services? What is your opinion?
So that's a great question, and thank you for asking that, because I was just thinking that if I could have one more minute for a final comment, I was going to comment on that. So what I would like to, what I need for everybody to understand is that crime, and this is a form of crime, is all about opportunity. It's all about opportunity. So if I'm the active shooter, the less than hardened target is the target that I'm going to go for, because it's an easy opportunity. Think about targets that are generally hard. Can you get into the White House? No, you just can't, unless there's someone inside the White House that is going to, bring a weapon. But even if you know anything about the White House, you can't bring a weapon into the White House, right? So, and I know it's an extreme, and I'm going to answer your question. And I know it's an extreme example, but my point is crime is about opportunity, all crime. And I remember, and this is where I'm gonna go to your question, I remember when I was a lieutenant, and we had a series of break-ins and car break-ins, if you will, in a neighborhood, and a resident came up to me and she said, listen, I do not wanna live like this. I wanna be able to live in a neighborhood where I can keep my doors unlocked, my windows open, and my cars unlocked at all times. And I said to her, well, go ahead. Go ahead. You can live like that. The crime's about opportunity. And understand that you are not the governor of someone else's behavior. You are not able to direct someone else and tell them how they're gonna act or react or do something. You can't do that. So go ahead. Leave your cars and doors and if you want, that's how you live. I'll never tell you how to live or not live, but understand human behavior and understand that you cannot tell another person how to act or what they should be. You can tell them, but they won't do it. So the answer to your question is, and how I was going to end up my entire presentation is, it's up to you folks. What do you want? Just understand, the more security, the less opportunity. So as a congregation and a house of worship, maybe there should be a committee that comes together and says, I speak for this congregation, and this is where we need to be. That's the answer to that question. Because I'm never going to tell you should have metal detectors at that front door. I will never tell you that because I don't go to this church. It's up to you folks to decide how you want to live.
Is it my turn? First of all, what you are not aware of is that last May 5th, which was a Saturday, through the Ohio Crime Prevention Association, we had an all-day workshop here in Fellowship Hall about House of Worship safety.
Good.
All right, and that was through Officer Dunn Marty Dunn at the Shaker Heights Police Department. So I've already started the conversation, and we have just also started a task force, which will be getting started within the next month or two to help make the congregation aware, because we had a great one-day workshop, but then what happens?
Right.
So we are already in the process. John DePietro was our trainer. He did a wonderful job. I'm still in touch with him. So the resources have been tapped into, and now it's time to make the congregation aware of that they are all responsible for it.
Right. Thank you.
As a grandma, I have to say thank you so much. Okay, as a grandma, I have to say thank you so much for what you're doing. But there's the other side. What are my kids being told, and how scary is this making their lives? And I assume you're doing things but could you talk about those things that you're doing to help the students who are hearing all this terrible stuff?
Right, great, thank you. Part of it is, let me go back to metal detectors. Recently, our schools in Ohio received dollars from Mike DeWine's office. We received $30,000 for Cleveland Heights. I'm sure Shaker probably received something around the same. And to utilize the money for school safety. So they are saying, hey, here's some dollars, school districts, you decide. And we decided to use ours just on making sure that we had cameras and our doors, make sure our outside doors were secure. Having the conversations with our students in some ways have been difficult because kids, especially the pre-K and kindergartners, don't really understand. So we're making sure that we are talking to them about listening to their teachers, following protocol. When teachers are saying that it's quiet time, you know what that means. When it's emergency time, you know what that means. And really not making sure that we expose them to too much information if they're too young to really digest. With our older students, we are in our buildings, we are talking about purchasing some wands, the metal detector wands to use periodically, And for our special events, we are investing in metal detectors, the kind that you can fold and put away. So when we have our basketball games and such, that we have those metal detectors. So it's kind of, when you think about when you're going to the airport and other places, you know, you're taking your kids and your families through those security measures, but how do you do that in a school and have that conversation? It can be challenging, but we're trying to make sure that we're having it in a way that is meaningful for the age group of students that we are talking to and approaching, so that they know when they come to school, it is about learning and being with their friends and having a good experience, but the school district understands that safety is a priority, but we don't want kids stressed out about not feeling safe. And we hope that we're doing a good job at it. But if we're not, send us an email and say, you know what, students are still, my grandchild is still concerned about this. And maybe it's a conversation with that teacher or that building principal to make sure that the students feel calm and safe and secure when they enter the building.
Hi. I work in the schools myself. I now work part-time in the East Cleveland school, so I witness, you know, all the entry and exiting and that kind of stuff. The question that I want to ask, or the point I want to make, has to do, to follow up on Graham's comment over there, is that sense of fear. Because we all know that when people have a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear, the ability to concentrate on education is diminished. And I know it's a tough fence to sit on, of having people prepared, but not enhancing that fear. And I wonder if there's a way to promote the reality that at the end of the day, students are still statistically much safer in school than they are in their own homes, let alone in the general community. And I don't know if people understand. Students are safer in school than they are at home. I listen to parents around me say, you know, I don't know if I should send my child to school because I don't know if they're going to be safe. Well, they're safer there.
You're right, because sometimes, you know, I'm from Oxford, Mississippi, and my dad, who is a retired educator, believes that everyone in Oxford knows him. So if he gets up in the morning, he unlocks the doors in the back door. So if you knock on the door, he'll say, "Oh, come on in," you know, and whoever comes in, he just, you know. And I say, "Daddy," you know, but he believes that in Oxford, Mississippi, that is okay. And to your point, but in a school district, you can't walk into the elementary school and say, "Hey, I'm here to see Murray, you know, come on in." So it's really educating people and having that understanding. Yes, schools are safer. You have a badge. Even when I go around to all of the 11 schools, I have a badge and a key fob. And we have security people that are saying, okay, who are you? I make sure that I sign in and out. Even someone said, "Oh, you don't have to sign in." Yes, I do. Because I want you to be consistent with me as you would anyone to come in. I walked into a first grade class at Fairfax, and the student said, "You don't have your badge." Stranger danger. I said, "Oh my gosh, stranger danger." But he was absolutely right. I need to make sure I have my lanyard on, because students know. I said, wow, that teacher has taught them that lanyard means that you are a part of this organization. So it's some of those, making sure all of our adults understand the protocol, and it doesn't matter who we are. We are making sure we follow the protocols at all times. And you're right, our schools are safer, and if we can get some of our family members and people to say, "Okay, Daddy, it's not okay to unlock the door and keep it unlocked all day and wait for people to come in." But that lifestyle that he chooses to live can be, unfortunately, we hope nothing ever happens, but he is vulnerable to something happening to him than they are at school. But thank you for lifting that point.
Thank you for the presentation. Chief, you brought up the point that opportunity is the secret. speaking of the school system, how does the school system deal with bullying, the opportunity to bully a student? How do you handle that?
Wow, a very good question. And bullying is, first we have to make sure we clearly define bullying. So bullying, by definition, is something that's happening over and over, right? Some people think that when you come up and I'm saying, I'm going to beat you up after school, that's a bullying act. But by definition, it's not. It may be a threat. So we have put our protocols in. We have bullying forms. Our students can inform a teacher. Parents can go online and inform our school officials about a bullying incident. But again, students telling and not being afraid to tell that a student is bumping next to them in the cafeteria or are sending notes or messages. And for our elementary students and our middle school students, we really try our best to resolve that. We have our counselors and our social workers that are trained to have conversations with students, and that's how we want it to happen first. We have our conversations with students. We even have our parents. Sometimes you'll be amazed, we have incidents that we were involved, our police officers from the city to come in and have family meetings and just have a conversation about something that may be happening and how we can resolve it with just including our adults, including conversations and clarity on what's happening. But if we see that things are continuing, we have policies and students will be consequenced. And we have found that we've had to in some instances, but 9 times out of 10, when we have those conversations with our students together, with trusted adults, and even with their parents, we usually see that it really wasn't bullying, it was something else.
In all the school systems or in all of life, there are people that are having real psychological problems. Do all the schools have psychologists available? And do you work with both the parents then and the child and get them that kind of help?
At Cleveland Heights, we have a security personnel in every building. We have a social worker and a psychologist and a guidance counselor in every one of our school buildings. So we've made the investment. It's costly, but we believe that it is important that we have those, and we have agencies that we partner with. We've recently hired someone as our wraparound services coordinator, and we're providing wraparound services in our schools. So we're partnering with other agencies. We want to make sure that we remove all barriers. So when students come, if they have an issue, there's someone they can talk to, and there's someone or agency that we can link their parents and their families to if they need to talk to as well. But we've made an investment in Cleveland Heights. I'm not sure Shaker and other districts, but it is expensive when we do that. But we believe that is important, and it is a district choice, so you don't have to, but we've made that choice to have those personnel there.
Do you know what happens in Shaker Heights?
I don't want to speak for the school system, but I can tell you what I do know. I do know that they have a school psychologist at the high school and middle school, and we have, in regards to security, we have 2 police officers in the high school every day and 1 in the middle school every day.
And we don't have police officers, we have safety and security people that we've hired, but we partner with our police departments, and if we need them, so for example, in our high school, they may come during the lunch hour, but we do not have police officers in our schools.
Our police officers are in addition to Dr. Dixon safety, so they have their own safety and security personnel and plus the police officers.
My oldest son is about 45 now, and he's married and has children in a house, and he's a
Microphone's not working.
he's a normal citizen. He's a pretty normal adult citizen. When he was 12, he and another boy in Cleveland Heights found on the early days of the internet how to make a bomb. and they undertook trying to do this behind the garage of a neighbor, and the neighbor caught them, you know, and so they reported to us and to the school, and we kind of treated it as adolescent stupidity, and it was a different era. I mean, there wasn't all this stuff, and the question is, how are these kids handled? There is a certain amount of adolescent stupidity, and you don't want to end up having a criminal record for that kind of thing that's going to affect your future. So can you say something about that?
Yeah, I think that it's fairly straightforward and easily answered. And I think you categorize it well. There's a lot of adolescent stupidity. I don't know about Dr. Dixon, but I certainly had my share of it growing up, and just did silly, stupid stuff. And it's easily addressed through interviews. It really is. I mean, police officers and our investigators are trained in interview techniques, and they have just a whole breadth of, or a whole continuum of training in regards to interviewing, whether it's adults or juveniles. And we would take your son, and we would talk to him, and we'd started out with not the incident, but we'd start out with, hey, how's your life going? Good. You know, having any problems with friends, and it goes from there. And it's more complex than I'm giving it, giving credit to it, but it's easily, I would say, determined that your son obviously was just being an adolescent.
But from the school end, that student would probably be facing some serious consequences, maybe an expulsion hearing, in which they're defending themselves or their actions and that can be detrimental to a kid too. Can you imagine a third grader in an expulsion hearing? You got a hearing officer explaining their, you know, what they were doing, attempting to do. And those events can be traumatic. So it's really weighing how do you get kids to understand that their behaviors are inappropriate, but you don't want to have an event that's so traumatic to them, like an expulsion hearing. Right. But we don't have any other choice. Right. You've done something that you've broken a school rule or policy, so you have to take you through this process. And those processes can be really traumatic from the school end, and weighing those have been challenging for us. But we have to do the due diligence before we even send it over, to the police.
So, and I'll end it up with it's a felony under school law to convey a firearm and or dangerous ordinance, a bomb, inside of a school. It was behind your garage or your neighbor's garage, which is not a felony for the school. Right. Where I'm going is that, let's say your son did do that, and for whatever reason he did do that, and Dr. Dixon painted it very well, that's a very comprehensive situation that we would look at from the school system and from law enforcement and from the court system, and say, you know, he's a nice young man. He has to go through the processes, but in the end, we have to have faith in the system that we would treat him accordingly, and his punishment would be according, you know. So
I want to follow up on that with my frustration, and it's, you know, for good reasons. The student code of conduct, it's like if you engage in this behavior, this is what's going to happen to you, whether it's suspension or expulsion or whatever. And as we're describing, sometimes that has a larger and negative more consequence than we would like it to have. So my question is, the restorative justice movement, and I know in Shaker at the middle school, they've embraced that, and I'm just wondering what your opinion of those alternative approaches are, and what are the results that you see, if anything.
So we have the restorative practices, and what that is giving students the opportunity to talk with trusted adults about something that's happening with them. So you're sitting, we do circles. So you're sitting in a circle, you're coming, you're being very vulnerable in a sense about what's happening to you, how you're feeling about something, an event, and getting feedback from others, peers or teachers. That process is working well with us, and we've trained not only teachers and our guidance counselors, social workers, but also our security staff. So so we have some security staff that we're training. The issue is, when we were younger, you could do something and your parents say, okay, go to your room and you're gonna be punished for a week and you're fine, right? Some students now, their punishments are taking a different toll on them. And these experiences, and I don't know if it's us defining them, are we just traumatic experiences? With us was just you get a spanking, you go to your room and you come out, you're fine for the rest of your life. Now these things they're not happening with our students now, and we're really looking at how do we discipline or have tough conversations with kids to course correct, but not have a detrimental outcome. So we don't want a kid to get a punishment from family and then come back to school the next morning with a gun and do something, irrational. But when you listen to Chief's presentation, 9 times out of 10, that's not how it happens. Because people are planning and they've been more calculated. But we don't want those events to happen. So again, it's conversations with our students, conversations with our parents. I push all the time in the Cleveland Heights community that we can't do all the heavy lifting alone. It can't be the school by ourselves. We cannot do it by ourselves. So it really takes all of us partnering together, understanding how systems, a systematic approach is a better approach. And for us to understand the citizens that we serve, the kids that the families, all of that kind of blends together. And hopefully we can have some conversations. We do have conversations, let me say. We do have conversations that are helpful to our kids, and we hope they're not detrimental to our kids and their families on the long term. Does that make sense? It's complex. It's no easy answer, and we're just continuing to have conversations and trainings to be able to assist in some way.
Hello. My question is going back to your comment about crime and opportunity. I want to take a look at the bigger context. Just looking at this week and the lethal and non-lethal attacks that happened, the mail bomber, although no one died, the religious attack or the anti-Semitic attack, the racial attack with a shooter at a grocery store killing 2 or 3 African Americans but saving whites, saying that whites don't kill whites. Looking at that context, what else can we talk about other than adding metal detectors and more firearms to the discussion? And also taking a couple more steps back and looking at our society versus the rest of the world. Why is this a phenomenon in our American society?
Yeah. So I think your question really kind of dovetails into the presentation, right? So those incidents occurred because of what was presented to you. It's just that the victims or the witnesses weren't exposed to the shooter, but someone was. And my point will always be is our safety is going to be dependent on everybody else. And that's kind of where I was going, but it's a hard concept to think about that. Listen, you can do all you can to protect yourself, but it might not be enough. So you have to rely on your neighbor to help you also. And in those instances, for example, the bomber, the shooter in Pittsburgh, someone was exposed to those people and had interpersonal interactions with those people, and probably should have come forward and said, listen, this person is I'm a little disturbed by this person's behavior. Here's the stressors. Now I know they haven't had the benefit of this presentation. Here's the stressors they've been under. Or, he or she is so wrapped up in this ideology of whatever they believe in, right? And anti-Semitism, white power, whatever it is, that needs to be brought. And I will tell you that in the city of Shaker Heights, yeah, there are people that we have in our little dossier, if you will, that we watch. Absolutely, because, and it might not be justified. And that's why we don't take action, we just kind of watch. Because people have brought this to our attention. You know, that's all, I think that's all we can do, and I think the other thing is, and from the question over here is, it's all how you want to live your life. Dr. Dixon talked about her father. He opened the back door. I think he understood the consequences of that. But that's how he wanted to live. And I will never tell anybody, it's beyond my scope of authority or my personal beliefs, that I will never tell anybody how to live their lives. Just understand, however you live your life, there are consequences. I don't know if that helps or not.
I have a real quick question. One comment was made about the repercussions or the effect on students and their discipline. Okay. In the news, well, we're coming up to voting about drugs, right? What
Issue
about
one?
schools and drugs and the repercussions and the effect on children, both small and as they approach senior high? You know, how is that dealt with? I hope they don't end up as felons. Comment?
Are we talking about issue one, or?
Well, no, let's not talk about issue one, but what happens in the schools?
When students bring drugs to school,
Yeah.
they receive a consequence. We have, and just recently, and it's been challenging for us, we've had adults who believe that this medical marijuana is okay to administer to their students.
What?
So, you know, so people have beliefs about what they believe is medically appropriate for their students. Some parents do not want their students to take Adderall or Ritalin. They just think there's some other natural methods that will help calm their students, keep their students calm. And we have to deal with those things. Drugs are not appropriate in our schools. They've never been since I've been in education, and we have to deal with it appropriately. So when students bring drugs to school, they're dealt with. It's an offense, it is an expulsion hearing, and we deal with it, and deal with it in their parents. So drugs, firearms, weapons, it's automatic expulsion hearing. We give them their due process. But those are the things we cannot afford to. Now, on the other end, that we're constantly looking at our school policies and our rules and making sure that they're appropriate for each age group. And the offense, we don't want to make sure that we're not punishing kids for a crime that's, you know, you take a pencil and you expel for 20 days. You don't want that. But drugs and weapons and alcohol, those are things that we really have to make sure that we're very, very serious about the consequence, and working with our parents and our agencies to make sure that if students bring drugs or they seem to have a drug problem, we want to get them treatment. You know, it's like we don't want to throw the kids out. I mean, this is a student that we want to be a productive citizen, so we want to make sure we're partnering with agencies to make sure that they have the care that they need, even though that they may receive a consequence.
I think we have time for one more question.
Well, I appreciate everything you said. And what you're doing is comforting, but it's reactive. And I know you said it's another conversation, but it's pretty obvious that the proliferation of guns is a factor. And I know you're both head of agencies that can't promote social change, shall I say? But I want to know if either or both of you think that there would be less of what you have to contend with if there were fewer guns. And if you don't want to answer this, I appreciate it. But I hope the rest of us will work for gun control.
So, good question, and I think the easiest, I won't say the easiest answer, the most common sense answer from my perspective as a law enforcement officer is that proliferation of guns, I would say that the country is so saturated with weapons at this point in time. If all the manufacturers were not able to sell one more weapon, and, you know, the country is so saturated with weapons, I don't know if that is the answer at this point in time. I'm not a big gun guy, you know, I've been a police officer for 32 years, but I'm not a big gun guy, you know, I have to qualify with it and that. But I just know, you know, I like to deal in reality. And the reality is the saturation, you know. I don't know that it's the, you know, it's the who gets a gun and who doesn't anymore. It's just that there are so many, and we are taking guns off the streets in record numbers, and they just keep rolling in, you know. And it's just, we're at a saturation point, and it's just, they're so readily available. And I always say this, and I know I'm going to hear a groan from the crowd at this, is that, how did the war on drugs go? That's how I look at the war on guns.
All right, I think it's time to let the people who want to go upstairs for the service leave quietly. And Chief,